active. Downsize that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Oh. Downsize that. Galore. Alright. What are you doing?
Autopilot jumping.
Good morning. Lights are out. I'm turning them on right now.
Warping to Stargate. Warp
Yeah.
drive active.
Right now. Let's start with this. Go over here and do this.
Approaching Stargate. Autopilot jumping.
Okay.
Warping to station. Warp drive active.
Do a little bit more of that. It's too low.
Approaching station.
Oh, I didn't check anything. I don't know what I look like. Approaching station. Let's look at that.
Docking permission requested.
Oh, that's not too bad, huh?
Docking
Woo!
request accepted.
White face. Okay.
Pilots disabled. Waypoint reached.
We here, honey. Not here yet. Let's capture display. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, that looks better. In the station. Oh, I hope the sound is okay. Okay, go down here. Oh. Yay. Today, I was just gonna do a little bit of mining. Because a few minutes ago, I just spent all my money. I'm down to 165 million. The beginning of the week, on Monday, the Monday that just passed, today's Monday, last week Monday, 7 days ago, I had 1.2 billion. It goes by so fast. So, today, we are gonna go mining. Mining laser, nice harvesting range. Ooh, the scope. A year ago. Huh. Yeah. There you go. I wonder what that looks like over there. Let's take a look. You can't see it.
Click back, tell them all my shit. I'm kicked back, putting out my clip. Better sit back. When I'm riding up fifth, got you big man. Then I'm trying. Kill love, what the fuck you gon' do? I'ma cock my nine and do motherfucker. Click back, tell them all my shit. I'm kicked back, putting out my clip. Better sit back. When I'm riding up fifth, got you big man. Then I'm trying. Kill love, what the fuck you gon' do? I'ma cock my nine and do motherfucker. Click back, tell them all my shit. I'm kicked back, putting out my clip. Better sit back. When I'm riding up fifth, got you big man. Then I'm trying. Kill love, what the fuck you gon' do? I'ma cock my nine and do motherfucker. Click back, tell them all my shit. I'm kicked back, putting out my clip. Better sit back. When I'm riding up fifth, got you big man. Then I'm trying. Kill love, what the fuck you gon' do?
Hey, come on. Mine. I'm gonna mine.
Kill love, what the fuck you gon' do?
Mining.
Somebody learned how to play. Somebody learned how to.
Alright. Let's go out to the spot.
I no longer fear my demons and monsters. I embrace them and hold them dear. These demons and monsters stood by me when everyone else
Oh, wrong button. Yes, I just hit record and prepare anything. Just record and then start doing stuff. That's what I'm gonna do. What is going on here? Oh. Oh, there's still one going. Okay, we're mining. And then we're aligning to here. And then stopping. And hit the tactical maps. Right there. Hammerheads, come on back. Salvage drone, go to your salvage. Mining drones, come on out. Hit another Veldspur. And make the mining drones go at it. Okay. Alright. Turn this back on. Just wanted to do brightness adjustments.
To ever be put in that situation ever again. I no longer fear my demons and monsters. I embrace them and hold them dear. These demons and monsters stood by me when everyone else stood against me. They became like family, and they made me a stronger version of my weaker past self, and now I refuse to ever be put in that situation ever again. I no longer fear my demons and monsters. I embrace them and hold them dear. These demons and monsters stood by me when everyone else stood against me. They became like family, and they made me a stronger version of my weaker past self, and now I refuse to ever be put in that situation.
Well, I was gonna go home and take a nap, but I don't think that's fucking happening. Motherfucker, dude. Well, I was gonna go home and take a nap, but
What does that look like?
motherfucker, dude. Well, I was gonna go home and take a nap, but
Shut up.
Yeah. Be that Charizard. Didn't even see the Pharaoh. Yeah. Oh. I'm back.
Well, that is dark.
Hit exit. Exit button. Cut your stream. There,
Oh, it's too dark.
So I'm back. I think the last one was about an hour. So if anybody watched that whole thing, you're weirdos. But here we are. Why is desktop audio like that? Oh, is that the fans? Those are the fans. Look at the fan. Oh, so that last video probably really sucked. Audio wise. Sorry. Yeah, let's get a little bit of background. A little tiny bit of background buzz. Okay. Back in here. Put you there. Stack it all. Put you back over here. Close that. No, don't close that.
That works.
Let's get back in this guy. Head back over to security missions over where I was doing them, which were, where was I doing those?
Who's this?
Earth.
Crazy Dan Austria.
A century had passed since they discovered the Eve Gate.
EVE Online. CCP Games.
Earth.
There we go, right there. EVE Online.
Hello, FanFest! How you guys doing? You have fun?
In 2016 or something?
Good stuff. You can start in about an hour's time. That'll be great. So, we've heard a lot about what's coming in Citadel. We've heard a lot about Valkyrie. We've heard about new projects coming from CCP. But FanFest is about you guys. It's about everyone who's in the room right now and just the rich tapestry of player storyline that you guys have created over the course of the last 13 years. And I don't think that anything captures this better than this book by a gentleman that I'm just about to bring on stage. It's a tale of betrayal, it's a tale of corruption, it's a tale of just people beating the living crap out of each other in the game that we all love so much. And it's always one thing that happens in War and Eve, and that's an eye for an eye. You know, someone takes a punch at someone takes a punch at someone else. So I've kind of thought along that theme, and what we want to do tonight is we'd like to do an eye for an eye, but we'd like to do a book for a book. So what we've done is we've signed a limited edition copy of Eve Source. Hilmar has signed this on behalf of CCP, and I've signed it on behalf of everyone in this room and everyone watching on the stream. So I'd like to welcome the author of Empires of Eve to the stage, Andrew Groen, and he can take it away. Kill it, man.
Thanks, man. Oh, this is so cool. Oh my god. I don't know if you guys know this, but this book is amazing. Like, when I first started working on my book, Empires of Eve, I took a copy of Eve Source to my designer and to the manufacturer who, like, works with the printing factory and everything like that, and I was like, give me this. I want exactly this. Because I wanted to have, like, continuity. I wanted it to, like, sit and look really nice on the shelf and right next to
No, I'm all full up.
I idolized that book. It was so cool. Anyway, so yeah, as Falcon said, my name is Andrew Groen. I am the author of Empires of Eve, A History of the Great Wars of EVE Online. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Great War, which took place back in 2007, 2009. And so my book, Empires of Eve, is basically the study of what goes on out in Nullsec. It is an attempt to document a lot of the narrative of Nullsec. It is It starts way back in, probably even late 2002, 2003 in the alpha and beta phase of EVE Online. And it's about how the first corporations got started. It's about how the first nullsec governments began to form. It's about how those governments began to come into contact with each other and how their ideologies began to clash with one another. Because we kind of take that for granted nowadays in nullsec. That nullsec is the way it is because it's always been that way. But in the early days, there were a lot of clashing ideologies about how nullsec territory should be used. Should they be locked down to the mightiest power? Should they be free and open to the public of Eve? And there were all these different ideologues and political icons who would come out and, espouse their ideologies about how this territory should be used, all of these different things. And so it's the study of these governments and how these governments formed and what these governments believed and the leaders who led these societies of thousands of players. In the early days of EVE, it would have been, in the hundreds or even sometimes in the dozens as corporations themselves were fighting these wars in nullsec. And then as those groups grew and as they gained power, it's the story of eventually how they banded together into alliances and coalitions for protection against other alliances and coalitions, and eventually how they banded together into super coalitions to defend against other coalitions. And ultimately, the sort of climax of the book is how these organizations kind of collapsed into a state of total war from 2007 to 2009 in what we know of today as the Great Eve War. And you notice I refer to it as the Great Eve War because, to me, it's not just an event that took place in EVE Online. To me, the massive things that happen in nullsec, the really earth-shaking events that take place out there, these are parts of human history. They're things that register to me on the scale of real-world battles. Like, the cliche is EVE is real, but, to me, that actually rings really, really true. And so I wrote a book about it, and it's called Empires of Eve. And what we've done, if you've ever seen me talk before in the past, what I did with last year at FanFest and at a couple of different speeches before was we examined some of the three main causes of what I believe really sparked the Great War in the first place. And today we're going to do something akin to like the sequel to that. We're going to see what actually happened once the Great Eve War actually got started. And to begin with that, we'll go over just a little bit of what it was like in that previous talk in late 2006. Three really major events are what shaped all of nullsec and really are what precipitated, they were the three dominoes that started everything tipping down, as far as I'm concerned, as a historian. Other people may disagree. And so the first of these, if any of you have seen the little movie that I put out to commemorate the launch of my book, is an event that I refer to as the Siege of CJ6MT. And it is about basically the last stand of the Russian community in EVE. In 2006, the Russians were basically the lords of the South. They controlled probably I would say about 5 to 6 regions. The entire Southeast was owned by an organization known as Red Alliance, which was basically entirely Russian. But over time, a lot of organizations started to view Red Alliance as unworthy of holding this territory, or they viewed themselves as the proper owners of the Southeast. And they came together, and they formed a union that I refer to as the Coalition of the South. At the time, they called themselves the Southern Coalition, but when you're writing a book about EVE, basically every 6 months there's a new organization called the Southern Coalition, so it gets very confusing very quickly. So I came up with a new name. It's the Coalition of the South, just a little bit of differentiation to help people out. And so the Coalition of the South comes together and basically wipes Red Alliance right off the map. And Red Alliance is pushed back to essentially not even one last system, but one last star base in the system CJ6MT. And in kind of a stunning battle, reminiscent of great last stands of history, honestly, the Russians are able to hold off a fleet of over 400 with only 70 defenders. And they cement their place in Nullsec, and they are able to actually kind of scare this much, much larger, much wealthier, and much more well-equipped alliance that we call the Coalition of the South. And the catch to this is that it's not just about this one battle, because this battle is actually being observed. There's a third party inside the Coalition of the South Fleet, a goon, diplomat, and spy by the name of Vile Rat. And he's observing this battle because he's on the lookout for allies for the Goon Swarm, who was a very young organization at the time. And what he sees convinces him at the battle of CJ6MT, the siege of CJ6MT, convinces him that the Russians are the future of Eve, the future of Nullsec, the future of goons. And he goes back to his alliance mates and he says, we need to form an alliance with the Russians. And the conventional wisdom inside of Goon Swarm at the time becomes, we need to ally with the Russians because either we're going to be allied with them or we're going to have to fight against them. And forget that. They already beat a fleet of 400 with just 70. What are we going to do? And so Goons have set up a meeting with Red Alliance, and they form a coalition between the two alliances, and they become known as Red Swarm Federation. And they also bring in a French outfit known as Tau Ceti Federation, and they become Red Swarm Federation. I don't know a whole lot about the French Tau Ceti Federation, but for your benefit, I have heard them called in the past Gallic Space Ninjas, so they were quite capable pilots themselves. And so that event that unites Goon Swarm, Red Alliance, and Tau Ceti Federation to form Red Swarm Federation becomes one of these dominoes that I'm talking about, and they set out on sort of a quest for revenge against the Coalition of the South. The second event, we're going to move through this pretty quickly. The second event is between two organizations, one known as Band of Brothers, and the other known as Ascended Frontier. At the time, Band of Brothers was by far the most powerful organization in Nullsec, by far the most powerful alliance. But in second place was this group known as Ascended Frontier. And Ascended Frontier were incredible builders. They were industrialists. They weren't necessarily military pilots. Band of Brothers was a strictly military organization. They were, some would say, actually kind of a fascist organization because they had this system where once you joined Band of Brothers, or at least the main corp of Band of Brothers, known as Evolution, you gave up all of your belongings like a monk or something. You dedicated it towards the Alliance, and the leader of the Alliance would be able to control those assets, and you became sort of the instrument. And the leader of that Alliance was a man named Sir Mole, who not enough players these days know who Sir Mole is. He was by far the most powerful man in EVE back in 2007, when this story begins. And so, for reasons we don't have time to explain, Band of Brothers decides to invade Ascended Frontier, and they end up actually destroying Ascended Frontier. And this in itself is not hugely significant, but what ends up happening is Band of Brothers hugely upsets the balance of power out in Nullsec. They get rid of this organization that was balancing things out, where now the Ascended Frontier turns out to be, a weight on the scales, and once it was taken off, it flips out of control. And so we'll see the ramifications of that later. And then the third is, so we see the disappearance of Ascended Frontier turns Nullsec into this, power vacuum. It becomes kind of a powder keg, and everybody's just sort of waiting for a match to light this powder keg, for something to set this group off. And then in early 2007, something actually does. A hacker by the name of Gutsuman releases an expose that essentially proves that a member of Band of Brothers is actually an employee of CCP Games by the name of T20. And worse than that, far worse than that, T20 had been spawning items into the game to create wealth for his alliance. It was hugely scandalous at the time. So that's the explanation for the stream. For the audience, basically what T20 had been doing was he gave himself a better chance of winning BPO lotteries so that he could get Blueprint originals, and I believe he had a Saber Blueprint original and a few others that were very, very, very popular and profitable at the time. And this comes off as hugely scandalous at the time, and the EVE community of 2007 is incensed at this, because they're looking and they see Band of Brothers as the most powerful group in Nullsec, And then someone comes along and says, look at them, they're cheating. And it makes sense to them in that moment. And to many of you, even at the time, it made sense. They said, look at this spectacularly powerful organization. They're cheaters. That's why they're winning all of these wars. That's why Band of Brothers never lost a war before. That is why they're so wealthy. That's why they're so well equipped. They're the pet alliance of CCP Games. And the other leaders who are out in Nullsec, they've seen what happened to Ascendant Frontier. And they're thinking, what happens when we get attacked by Band of Brothers? We weren't even as powerful necessarily as Ascendant Frontier. How are we going to hold back, the iron tide of Sermole? And so they see this, in my interpretation of these events is they see this controversy, and they say, this is our opportunity. And they co-opt this message, and they fan the flames of this controversy, and they rally the EVE community against Band of Brothers, and they say these guys are too dangerous to be allowed to survive. They have to be expelled from Nullsec forever. And that's basically what starts happening, is we see the beginnings of nothing short of a holy war against Band of Brothers, where every other organization in Nullsec gets together into a grand super coalition and unites to drive Band of Brothers out of Nullsec forever. And that's where our story begins this time. And so this is what Nullsec looked like in 2007. This is the south of Nullsec. And you can see this blue blob right here, that's Band of Brothers. And Band of Brothers at the time, this whole southern area down here, this used to be Ascendant Frontier. You actually see that purple blip right there. Ascendant Frontier hasn't quite been removed from the map. A few of their star bases were still lingering around when this snapshot of Nullsec was taken. And so Band of Brothers has moved in and has conquered most of Ascendant Frontier's territory. They've absorbed a huge amount of the old Ascendant Frontier corporations, and they've become fantastically powerful and fantastically wealthy. They become the lords of the South as well as the Southwest. And so if you look, that's Band of Brothers. As we talked about, Band of Brothers is extremely militaristic. They are extremely aggressive. They have the stated ethos that they have the manifest destiny to go out and to conquer all of EVE Online. And so this was actually a thing that they talked about internally called Operation Clockwise. They were so cocky and cocksure that they were going to move around the map clockwise and conquer every other alliance one by one. So not only were they going to conquer Nullsec, they were going to call their shot every time. They're going to say, we're coming for you guys up north first, and then we're coming for you in the northwest, and then we're going to come and we're just going to barrel everybody down one by one. Sermole of Band of Brothers was actually featured in an article in the New York Times talking about this plan, in which he says that he doesn't believe that EVE can actually be conquered militarily, but you can control the people through economic or through political means. That's what they set out to do. And so their goal is to kind of, conquer all of Nullsec, and then they will amass the might to march on HighSec and overthrow the great empires of Lore and defeat Concord, and then fly to Iceland to overthrow CCP Games. And so, okay, we look over here, and that's Band of Brothers. We've also got Locke of Volterra. A lot of these other organizations up here we don't have time to get into. They don't play as large of a role in the Great War, but we go over here and we see the green is Locke of Volterra. Locke of Volterra is largely quite similar to Band of Brothers. They are, again, one of the top 4 major powers at the time in EVE Online. They're sort of loosely allied with Band of Brothers. Actually, their main ally was Ascendant Frontier, but it's not really an option anymore. And so they're kind of relying on Band of Brothers for support. And Locke of Volterra was sort of the foundation of the coalition of the South that Red Swarm was fighting against in the first place. And Red Swarm has prosecuted their war against the coalition of the South. They've been spectacularly successful. You can see up there that red huge blob up there, that is now the territory owned by Red Alliance. Red Alliance spreads out from just one last star base to a dominion that spans probably over 300 different star systems. And so you've got that, you can actually see those warning signs up there are indications of battles that are happening in those regions. So they're actually, at this moment, as this screenshot is being taken, they're pushing forward and taking over the territory of the Coalition South. right there in Laca Volterra's territory as well. So they're pushing into Laca Volterra's territory. This is what's happening really at the start of this whole thing. And so we've got Band of Brothers, Laca Volterra, Red Alliance, Red Swarm Federation. And so this is the north. There's a whole lot less going on up here. It's a much simpler thing. You can see the sort of the blue tip of Band of Brothers Empire. That's the sort of the northern reaches, and then Rise is an ally of theirs as well. And so everything north of UWAT and north of CDC and Pure, that's an organization known as the Northern Coalition. And the Northern Coalition was probably the most populous organization at the time. They had huge numbers. They were spectacularly powerful and profitable, but they weren't necessarily a military power. They weren't, at the time, necessarily able to attack someone like Band of Brothers single-handed. And so this is where our story this time begins. So most of that's basically preamble that I've talked about before. What we're talking about now is what happens after the expose that launches this holy war against Band of Brothers. And so basically these slides are like my notes. You don't even really have to pay that much of attention to them. But so here we go. Band of Brothers has just finished up its war.
Yeah, I'm not much of an entertainer, so it's, you know, this is old. I don't think anyone's gonna care. It's from 2016.
They have got Laca Volterra. It's the most powerful organization, but
I think I'm alright.
finish out that
I mean, you got me in my face, and that's far away with really crappy quality. If you want to really see it, you gotta go to EVE Online's
are split in two by
YouTube
Red Swarm
page.
Federation.
So just
Red Swarm
go and do
Federation
that.
basically carves a wedge right in the middle of them.
click away right now. Do it. I don't care. I do a little
They've
bit,
got the Southern
but not
Front of the
really.
Coalition of the South and the Northern Front of the Coalition of
Like
the
and
South.
subscribe.
And they decide to, debut this new strategy they've got, that they've designed, known as the Swarm. They're going to bring every pilot they can possibly get, and they're going to march them right into the headquarters of the last remaining Northern Alliance of the Coalition of the South, which is Veritas Immortalis. Not really, don't need to remember that name or anything. And they march it into the headquarters of Veritas Immortalis, known as 1VTech Li2. And we're going to march right through this stuff, but 1V Li2 turns out to be an incredibly fascinating battle because Red Swarm marches in there with hundreds of pilots, and Veritas Immortalis puts up this huge fight, and, long story short, a Doomsday goes off, and remember at the time, a Doomsday was an AoE blast. A lot of you newer players may not remember this, but Doomsdays weren't single target damage, they were actually AoE hits. And so, a Doomsday goes off in the middle of this battle, and 217 Red Swarm ships are destroyed in about 2 seconds. And they still win the battle. All their pods immediately warp out, reship, get back into the fight, and the swarm tactic is shown off for the first time. We get to see what happens when all these huge numbers of the goons, remember the goons brought huge numbers into Nullsec and brought this new theory of what you could do if you just had so many people that you could overwhelm your enemy. And the result is this moment where both Laca Volterra, who owned that Titan, that destroyed 212, I believe it was 212 ships, is very, very happy with this result because, they lost their ally, Veritas Immortalis, which falls apart as a result of this battle. But they've shown off that they can use Titans better than anybody. They're really, really good at this. And they've killed 200 ships with a single shot. And Red Swarm is obviously very happy because they've killed another alliance. They've removed another threat to them. And as a result of Veritas Immortalis being defeated, the northern front of the war is closed, and they're able to focus on the southern front. Now, with Laca Volterra, we see a new front of the war opened, and Laca Volterra goes seeking help from Band of Brothers. Basically, Band of Brothers is their last lifeline, and they need Band of Brothers in order to survive this huge, fleet that's coming to destroy them. But at this moment, right at this moment, the Northern Coalition has embarked on its end of the Holy War to push Band of Brothers out, and it has sent hundreds of pilots to swarm Band of Brothers territory and to attack everywhere in Band of Brothers territory. Because remember, Band of Brothers commanded the finest fleets in Nullsec. If you went up against Band of Brothers, in a straight-up fleet fight, you were done. There was no chance you were going to win that. So the theory was, let's use our numbers. Let's attack everywhere. And then when Vander Brothers comes at us with one of their fleets, we'll just disperse. And then we'll attack someplace else. Never did they ever actually try to attack Vander Brothers head on. And so Vander Brothers is busy. They've got all these different attacks that are hitting them all over in their space. And remember, they have a ton of space, so they're being hit everywhere. And there's all these different hangers-on and political allies who are just leading, and even just groups who were interested in taking a shot at Vander Brothers, these small organizations, low-sec organizations, who were curious, what happens if Vander Brothers is busy? Why not just go take a shot at him? If Goliath is busy, why not take a jab? But at this moment, so Vander Brothers is dealing with the attacks from the north and decides that those are more important right now than dealing with Locke of Volterra, because Vander Brothers, remember, they think very highly of themselves. They're very, very cocky, and they don't believe that Locke of Volterra is that crucial of an ally. They believe they can take on Nullsec single-handed. And they don't actually think that they need to go intervene with Locke of Volterra, because if you think that you're the best, if you think that you are the best military organization that has ever existed in Nullsec, what that means is that everybody else is at their very best, second best. And so what do you need them for? They're just going to get in the way. And so Red Swarm Federation attacks Locke of Volterra because they see this moment of opportunity. They see that Vander Brothers is distracted. They may not actually even come help Locke of Volterra, and they realize they've got a chance to strike Locke of Volterra with everything that they've got and take them out of the war and leave Vander Brothers by themselves. And so that everybody else can have Vander Brothers alone without any allies. And the intelligence agents of Red Swarm have identified that Locke of Volterra not only has one Titan, as they found out to spectacular effect, but is building a second as well. Remember, this is an era of EVE Online where there only were 4 Titans in existence. Vander Brothers had one, Locke of Volterra had the other, and I believe the third was in the Northern Coalition's hands at the time. And I think the fourth was being built in this system known as JV1B TAC-O, which is this dead-end system in Tenerifis. And that becomes very important because it's sort of like this Alamo style
Did you poop in the house last night?
fight where there's no way out. It's a one-way system where you're just sort of locked in the basement and the attackers are trying to get in, and you've staged your last stand in the system known as JV1B TAC-O.
And she should have brought you out here.
Figures out that this Titan is being built there, and they want to go and they want to destroy it. And they want to go there and they want to rally every pilot that they possibly can, and they want to destroy Locke of Volterra with a single shot. They would have described it as maybe cutting the head off of the snake, going and just destroying their morale with unthinkable support, and saying, what hope do you have of actually defending against the grand forces of our armada? And so all of these different organizations, they show up, and everybody who is looking at Red Swarm and saying, these guys are the future. Look at what they've been able to accomplish in the Southeast. They've conquered 4 whole regions. This is an opportunity to get in on the ground floor, to sort of kiss the ring of royalty right as royalty is ascending. And everyone wants to show up for this. And what culminates is the Battle of JV1B TAC-O. Now, Locke of Volterra knows that this is coming, and they know that Vander Brothers isn't going to show up to help them, but they've got their own plan. Because what they've decided to do is they have assembled a 500-man battleship fleet, which was enormous at the time, you have to understand. This alone probably would have been the largest fleet ever assembled in 2007. And Red Swarm is going to show up with probably more than 1,000 ships of their own, which doesn't sound like that much to the modern ear, but at the time it was unthinkable. And so Locke of Volterra has their 500-man battleship fleet, and there's only one gate into this system, so they've just got every gun they've got pointed directly at that Stargate. And then on the other side of the Stargate, they've got their Titan in a system called MRPN-3. And the idea is that when the battle begins, Red Swarm will begin warping into the system, and that Stargate's going to act a little bit like a toll booth. And once they start getting clogged up, the Titan, so you've got JV-1V, you've got the Stargate in the middle, and then you've got MRPN. And as the fleet starts warping into JV-1V, half the fleet will be stuck on the other side of the Stargate. The Titan jumps in, the fleet's all clustered around on the Stargate. But Doomsday goes off, and you might even do more damage than 212 ships destroyed in a single moment. Now, Red Swarm has a little bit of a plan of their own. They come at the head of more than 1,000 pilots, but they have some kind of understanding. They know that it's going to be too much to get through that single Stargate, so they take 300 of those ships, and they log them off inside the system, inside of JV-1V the night before. And so you've got 300 pilots already logged off inside the system. You've got 500 battleships pointing all their guns at the Stargate. You've got the Titan hiding in MRPN-3, and you've got Red Swarm trying to get through that Stargate. And the day of the battle comes, and everything's going according to plan. Red Swarm is pushing their way through that Stargate. The Titan warps in and has half of the Red Swarm fleet in its sights. And the Titan smacks the Doomsday button, and the whole screen goes black. Because the server crashed. And now everybody's just frantically trying to get online. They're all, you can imagine there's a great battle about to happen, and they're stuck typing their password into the login screen. But remember, Red Swarm already had 300 ships trying to log online. So when the login queue strikes, as almost 1,500 pilots are trying to get online, those Red Swarm ships are the first ones to get online. And so there are 300 Red Swarm ships, fully equipped, they have their fleet commander online, they have a great chain of command set up and everything, and they're alone inside this system, and they start attacking the Lock of Volterra derelict fleet that's still floating through space in JV-1V. And they're able to destroy that entire defense fleet without even a fight, as Lock of Volterra starts logging on in 1s and 2s, maybe 5 at a time, 10 at a time, no fleet commander anywhere in sight, completely disorganized. And the Battle of JV-1V, TAC-O, ends without a battle at all. And this proves to be an event of such gravity and such discouragement for Lock of Volterra that it destroys the entire organization. If any of you are fleet commanders, you know how hard it is already to get people to commit their entire Saturday to a fleet op. Imagine what it would be like if the server was going to crash and then you were going to lose the battle without even getting a chance to fight it. And so these pilots stop showing up for the battles, and Lock of Volterra falls apart from sort of internal strife as a result of this.
What are you doing?
Most of these organizations go and join up with Band of Brothers. This is very, very crucial, including Shinra Corporation, which was sort of the main military wing of Lock of Volterra, and they bring Lock of Volterra's Titan over to Band of Brothers to continue prosecuting this war, because Band of Brothers is their best opportunity. They know that the war is going to continue, and they know that Band of Brothers is the best opportunity for them to get their revenge against Red Swarm Federation. Now, Red Swarm Federation continues pushing Lock of Volterra through its territory, and they're bitterly fighting this struggle out to the very, very end. They're shooting down every freighter that they can get their hands on. They're taking down everything that Lock of Volterra doesn't take with them. And within just a few weeks, Red Swarm has mopped up the last resistance of Lock of Volterra, begins cleaning out their star bases, and takes sovereignty over much of the entire southeast of EVE Online. And so now, excuse me. Alright, so now the whole war gets a lot simpler, because now all of Melsec is divided into basically a triumvirate. You have Red Swarm Federation in the south and east, you have Band of Brothers in the south and west, and then you've got the Northern Coalition in the north. And it's very, very simple. Northern Coalition and Red Swarm have a non-aggression pact and a sort of a joint agreement, a loose agreement to work together in prosecuting the war against Band of Brothers. And so meanwhile, while all of this is going on, Band of Brothers has decided that they can't just sit back and be attacked by all these Northern Coalition fleets everywhere in their territory, and they hire an organization known as Mercenary Coalition. What's up, guys? Were you waiting for that? And so the Mercenary Coalition is hired to go into the north and get the northern front of the war under control.
What are you staring at?
And so Mercenary Coalition heads north, and we're not going to go too deep into why this happens. But
Lay down.
basically, all of the Northern
Lay down.
Coalition's attacking fleets, like their battle-hardened fleets, are in the south attacking Band of Brothers. So the Mercenary Coalition gets into the north and is facing off basically against militia and starts mopping the floor with them. They bring motherships and they bring carriers and these drone strategies that people in the north hadn't seen before. And
Lay
they
down.
just completely mop the floor with them.
Lay
And
down.
in a matter of about a month, the entire face of the North is changed. It starts turning blue on Band of Brothers. And Mercenary Coalition is literally just giving Saab away to whoever will take it because they can't hold anymore. They're doing so well against the Northern Coalition militia. And there's this wonderful story that I got from the Goon archives
This is Ike.
Of their own histories of what happens here.
Ike, look.
And It refers to an older event in which the Northern Coalition sort of antagonized,
Oh, you can't be seen. Come here.
in the Mercenary Coalition.
Come here.
Antagonized
Look.
Mercenary Coalition. As the Northern Coalition would regret screwing with Mercenary Coalition in the very near future, as Mercenary Coalition would descend upon them like the wrath of God. If you say so.
Is that you?
I love that quote. So,
You're so smart. You
Mole
can see
and Band of
yourself.
Brothers, they love this because it offers them the opportunity to focus for the first time. They don't have to be dealing with 100 different harassment attacks everywhere in their territory because the Northern Coalition now has to deal with attacks in their territory and they're taking the fight to the enemy. And Band of Brothers can focus on the clear and present danger that Red Swarm presents to them because now that Red Swarm has conquered lockable territory, they've got a direct border with Band of Brothers, and Band of Brothers knows that Red Swarm is coming. Not because they figured out some kind of secret, but because they hated each other. There was never any attempt to organize a peace deal in this whole grand war. Everybody knew that this was a fight to the finish, and that one of these organizations was going to be destroyed. And so, Red Swarm has again discovered the location of an inbuilt Titan, and they're getting a little bit worried about this. Because they're looking at Band of Brothers, which now has access to 2 Titans. Red Swarm now has 1 as well. They finished their own. It's been about a month since we started this story. And they're looking at Band of Brothers and they're saying, like, my God, they're going to have 3 Titans. We can't let that happen. Whatever strategy we come up with, it has to be dependent on destroying that inbuilt Titan. And so this Titan is being built in a system called AFTAC TE-1T. And AFTAC TE-1T is right in the middle of Delve, which is the home of Band of Brothers. This is, I believe it was the capital system of Rikoku, which was one of the key members of the corporation of the Band of Brothers. And so Red Swarm has decided,
You want to go?
we did extremely well
there
at
you go.
JP-1V.
Here you go.
We destroyed an entire organization with 1 single shot. Let's do it again.
Look, you can see yourself. Come here.
Swarm them with numbers
Come here.
and take them out and cut the head off the snake. This theory was proved very, very useful and very, very effective at JP-1V. And so Red Swarm again rallies every pilot that they can find. This is the theme with them. This is what they did back then. And they march them straight into the heart of Band of Brothers' empire in an effort to kill this 3rd Titan. Because if Band of Brothers gets a 3rd Titan on their hands, there's going to be no way that they can actually turn the tide of this war. And it culminates in what became known as the AFTAC TE-1T honeypot. So Red Swarm knows this is a crucial battle and wants to destroy Bob in a single blow.
This is
Bob
Ike.
knows the attack is coming. And
He's a good boy.
what they want to do, they know this huge fleet is coming, and they know that their members know that this huge fleet is coming, and so they want to bolster their pilot confidence. They want to say, like, yes, please log in for the battle because we're going to win. We're not just going to put up a fight, we're going to beat them. And so what's the Mole?
You kick out looking at yourself too, huh?
Confidently
You
project
conceded.
confidence, and show people that he was ready for this fight. And he writes, we're expecting something in the range of 200 to 300 capital ships total, 2 to 7 Titans, 5 to 25 motherships, and 5 to 10 support fleets, numbering at least 100 each. It's basically describing the scariest fleet that has ever been formed in the history of EVE Online up to this point. And so a Goon FC
Do you need to go poop?
replies,
Go outside?
not far off. And what you guys
Out.
believe. And Sir Mole replies with only 2 words. Our balls. I love writing about EVE Online. can't make this stuff up. It wouldn't be fun if you did. So the Battle of F-Tech TE-1T begins. And on March 29th, 2007, Red Swarm begins their assault. And again, all of these political hanger-ons show up to this fight, and this huge fleet shows up in F-Tech TE-1T. And they are assuming that they're going to win. That's why all these people showed up, because they just wanted like a little piece of history. They just wanted to be there for the fall of Band of Brothers. Victory was assumed. And so Red Swarm Federation shows up in 190 dreads, 250 carriers, far more capital ships than even Sir Mully predicted. They only have one Titan, hundreds of support ships, and they are outnumbering Bob probably 3 to 1 at this stage. Band of Brothers has, I think, somewhere in the range of 300 to 400 ships of its own. And they arrive in the system of F-Tech TE-1T, and Band of Brothers is waiting for them. They have this huge fleet that's just waiting for them above the capital shipyard where this Titan is being built. They've blobbed everything they have right above this shipyard. And Red Swarm gets into position, and their dreadnoughts go into siege mode, and they start pounding on this shipyard. They attack directly into the defense. They start pounding on the shipyard, and the shields are coming down. No one had ever seen before what 190 dreads could do. No one at this time had ever come close to that. You might have seen in the greatest battle up to that point 40 or 50 in one place at a time. So 190 was unprecedented. And so Band of Brothers is desperately trying to repair the shipyard while also making the attackers pay for their incursion. The artillery guns on the starbase are blasting at the Red Swarm fleet as well, and the damage tally is starting to tick up, but also the shipyard's being destroyed.
Oh.
Ultimately in this battle, the shipyard is destroyed, which was absolutely destined. There was no way they were going to be able to defend this shipyard. But more than 40 Red Swarm Federation dreadnoughts are killed in exchange. Now that is the largest tally, the most expensive loss. And I keep saying this, but this was a crucial moment. These huge battles, this was the largest, most expensive loss of ships in EVE Online history up to this point. So the shipyard dies.
Move.
But more than 40 dreads are killed in exchange. But Red Swarm is pretty happy about this. They're saying, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that we were able to go into Band of Brothers territory, slap them in the face, and make them bleed. That's the real lesson from this. That's what they really wanted to take away from this, was proving to the rest of EVE Online that not only was Band of Brothers mortal, but that victory against them might actually be assured. It might even be certain that they were going to destroy Band of Brothers. So the inbuilt Titan dies in exchange for a huge tally. Or does it? Here's what really happened. 2 days later, on April 1st, Sir Mully confesses that the Titan was killed and posts on the forums and congratulates them. And people are so jovial that they don't notice the date. It's April Fool's Day. So the next day, Sir Mully announces that he's been having some fun with people. And here's what really happened. There were 2 shipyards in F-Tech TE-1T. And Sir Mully believed that the attackers would roll up into the system, see that his defense was in a location, and immediately attack into the defense. He believed they didn't know which shipyard the Titan was in, so he set up a defense around an empty shipyard. And Red Swarm Federation attacked directly into his defense. The shipyard that was destroyed was again empty, and Red Swarm paid for it with an unimaginable cost. And so you have to understand what this looked like at the time. Everyone was afraid that Band of Brothers was invincible. People were so afraid of Band of Brothers at the time that they accused them of colluding with CCP Games in shady back rooms to become as powerful as they were. So the battle that was meant to crush Band of Brothers instead made them look brilliant. Sir Mully looked like this titan of men who was a brilliant strategist, and Red Swarm Federation looked foolish and easily duped. And the alliance that everyone said was invincible was proving to be just that. They were up to the task of taking on all of Nullsec. And in the wake of F-Tech TE-1T, Band of Brothers gets mad. And they start putting together their own super coalition. They start putting together alliances. Every alliance that still is considering being allied with Band of Brothers kisses the ring of Sir Mully and says, we're sorry. review again, and they put together what they eventually started calling the Greater Band of Brothers Community, which was an organization of probably more than 10,000 pilots. And the goal of the Greater Band of Brothers community is to push Goonswarm and Red Swarm as a whole into a failure cascade. They adopt this sort of bulldozer posture, and they continue just pushing one system after the other, knocking down every starbase that's in that system and taking Sov away from these regions one after the other. And this is horrible for Goonswarm, because they've lost this horribly crucial battle, and now Band of Brothers is angry, confident, and pushing through their territory one system at a time, and they can't seem to stop them. Band of Brothers now, in about 3 to 4 weeks, conquers 2 entire regions of former Red Swarm territory, as Red Swarm's just falling back, trying to get their footing and figure out how they're going to actually turn the tide in this war. Things have changed very badly, and remember, in the north, Mercenary Coalition has taken out the Northern Coalition as a strategic threat. The north is basically almost entirely controlled by Band of Brothers. If you looked at a sovereignty map at the time, you would have seen almost 3/4 of the map was Band of Brothers blue. And now Band of Brothers was marching on Red Swarm Federation. And to make matters worse, the leader of Goonswarm, a guy named Remedial at the time, decided that it was over. Eve itself was over, because nothing could possibly stop Band of Brothers. And not only that, but he makes off with the Goonswarm Titan Fund. All this money that they had been saving to build their own Titan, a ship that they one day dreamed would be called the Goon Cannon. He disappears with all of this, but I believe half of that money, billions of this, even in 2007, that was an unbelievable amount of money. And he was never heard from again, in Eve at least. And he appoints the Mittani to be his successor, even though the Mittani privately said he didn't want that job. And things were already bad, but now they'd lost their leader since their beginning. This was their founding father. And he decided that the war was hopeless. He wanted to get out. And the speculation was he didn't want to be blamed for the fall of Goonswarm and EVE Online, so he gets out and hands the reins to the Mittani. And now, for reasons that we don't have time to get into, the Mittani resigns from office after only a few weeks at the job. Things didn't go very well. And this, if you study the history of EVE Online, this is usually the moment where an organization falls apart. You have them being embarrassed in a large battle. You have an enemy of the most powerful organization in Nullsec pounding on their door. 2 leaders have abandoned them. Any other alliance that I've studied in the history of EVE would have collapsed from this much drama, but Goons survived. And it's very interesting to consider why. Goons are Goons first. They aren't EVE players first. This is an important factor in the history of Goonswarm, because it means that they will stick together through much, much more trying things than any other organization can handle, because there is no option for them. The Goons are not going to go play in another non-Goon organization.
What happened? Who's there?
That's not how it works. And so they stick together through
we're good.
very, very trying ordeals, even
We're good.
2 leaders in a matter of weeks. And a fleet commander known as Sesfon Kala is appointed to lead Goonswarm, and Sesfon Kala is he's referred to in the archives as sort of a no-nonsense, business-oriented fleet commander who kind of had a calming effect on Goonswarm, takes control of the organization, and things finally begin to calm down. They have a sort of military leader at their helm, and it brings the Goons back from the brink. And it's very, very important, because without Goonswarm, Red Swarm had no chance. Goonswarm was the firepower. They were the line pilots. The bulk of their armies would have been Goons at the time. Not only do they not collapse internally, but under the new leadership, they're sort of inspired. They see Sesfon Kala, and they're inspired by what he's able to achieve. And in June 2007, so the war's been going on for about 6 months by now, Band of Brothers has conquered 2 to 3 regions of Red Swarm territory, but they're able to stop Band of Brothers' momentum in a system called 9TAC980U in Tenerife. There's a factory in 9TAC9 where the bulk of this fighting takes place. And for 2 weeks, every night there's a battle about the factory in 9TAC9. And on June 20th, everything changes because CCP introduces a nerf to Titans. And I believe at the time, I'm not 100% on this at the moment, but I believe it was a nerf that allowed them to be tackled and warp disrupted. And 2 days later, a battle erupts over the system next door to Niantic 9 in 46 DP Tech O, and Sir Mole was there with his Avatar flagship, which he called Darwin's Contraption, which is an evolution reference. The main corporation of Banner Brothers was named Evolution. And so this was the key to Banner Brothers' success at the time. They had all of these Titans. They had 3 Titans, you now remember. And no battle could possibly be won because they would bring 3 Titans to the fight and wipe out any fleet. And if they didn't have their Titans in position, they would just refuse to take that fight. But on June 22, probably about 30 hours after the patch comes that introduces the Titan nerf, so Mole himself is in 46 DP, and he's piloting this Titan, and he maybe actually doesn't fully understand the new mechanics. Maybe he didn't read the patch notes. And he's tied down. He warps into the fight, blasts off a Doomsday, but not every ship is killed. And there's an interdictor who's able to tie down Sir Mole's Titan. And all of Goonswarm and Red Swarm Federation comes running, and they start pounding their guns into their hull. And there's actually surviving video of this, which is very rare from this era. And it's so much fun. A lot of you have probably even seen this video, where the very first time a Titan had ever been killed in combat occurs on June 22 in the System 46 DP. And it's very, very fun to watch. You can hear hundreds of Goon pilots cheering on the fleet comms. And you can actually hear, my favorite part is if you listen closely in the background, you can hear, "Here's to the finest crew in Starfleet." Because somebody turned on the Picard song in the background to celebrate. And so now this bulldozer, Band of Brothers refer to themselves as a pendulum for reasons that I'm not fully clear on, honestly. They seem to think pendulums were very, very spooky at the time. And so the pendulum was supposed to swing down and sweep people out of the way. But now the pendulum has been stopped. And Sir Mole's Titan has been killed at the apex of their progress through Nullsec. And now the pendulum begins to swing backward as Goonswarm and Red Swarm, as a whole, Red Swarm Federation, excuse me, I keep saying Goonswarm, starts to push back the Band of Brothers bulldozer of the pendulum. And now Red Swarm, in exchange, in their turn, is angry again, because Band of Brothers has tried to wipe them out. They've forced 2 of their leaders out of the Red Swarm Oval Office. Now they're very, very angry about this. One of the things that you find when you study Red Swarm in particular is that they all identified as pariahs. They all believed that the powers that be in Nullsec were there to wipe them out.
Hoje, voice.
To be able to exist on Nullsec. This is what bound them together. You'll hear they used to refer to this war, the Great War, as the glorious war of patriotic righteousness against the evil tyranny of Bob. And now Red Swarm has once again fought back from the brink of destruction. But that's all we have time for today. Because I'm sorry, but the story of the Great War is probably 4 hours long, and I just don't have the time to do that today. So what we'll do is, just as we did with this presentation, I'll have to come back next year for FanFest, and we'll give you the sequel. Or also, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I got kind of wrapped up in the story and forgot that this slide was coming. And so that this actually cliffhangered me as well. I have a book out. It's called Empires of Eve, A History of the Great Wars of Eve Online. The stand of this story is in that book. A great many other stories are in this book. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that it is only available in physical versions on Amazon in the United States. Amazon won't ship internationally for me at the present moment, but we're working on that. But if you're interested, the ebook version is available in most countries. Thank you so much for listening. And enjoy FanFest very much.
Well, that was a great video. I enjoyed that. What do we got? 15, 17. What's the... Um... 1 hour, 2018. EVE Online's YouTube, if you want to see it
Docking permission requested. Docking
with better quality
accepted.
and not backwards. Okay, let's open this up, put you right there, let's see what it sells for. Ouch. Okay. Well, I'm gonna be at this for a long time in order to make my money that I spent today. I spent, see, there's the broker's fee, that doesn't count. Transaction tax, that doesn't count. Right here. Market escrow. I spent $275,300,000, and that was for SP. And then skill purchase. And I'm making all these pennies, dollars, and pennies, dollars, pennies. Ugh. There's gotta be a better way to make money. More entertaining too, cause because what is going on? Share your FanFest experience. You've FanFest 2018. Alright, yeah, there's gotta be a better way to make money. I remember playing, but when I played, you know, I had an Orca and an alt account that ran my Hulk, and 4 other people, one person with 2 alts of their own, and then another person who was new, and we mined all day, like for 4 hours straight. We just mined, and we'd make, after the even split, all of us split even, we made I made 2 billion every mining session on an even split for everybody every day, and we were just mining Veldspar. We were able to pay for our subscription in a week, and then we'd fuck off and do our own thing for 3 weeks, and then we'd come back for a week, do the mining, and then we'd fuck off and do our own thing for 3 weeks again, until it became Hulk hunting season and HiSec was no longer safe. That was the Crucible or something. I don't know. It was bullshit because I don't know. Everyone I played with back yonder, they all quit. Or at least I don't know if they quit, but they haven't come back. I haven't seen that they logged in since 2012. So there's that. What am I doing? Actually, I do kind of want to do that. I think I want to get rid of 95% damaged.
Oh, and we also have extra
40.
associate badges for people who want to take them home to anyone. I think you know some seniors who are getting ready to FanFest. So.
Is that why I've got all these? Simple right here. I can't sell them. Can't sell them, can't repair them. Is that what's going on with all these? They're all damaged. Is that why they're out like this? Advanced custom cut frequency crystal whose refractive qualities are specifically suited to boosting yield when mining simple ores such as blah, 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 due to their molecular makeup and the strength of the modulated miner's beam. These crystals will deteriorate through extended use. Can be loaded into modulated mining lasers only. Modulated. Modulated strip miner. Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Back out. Oh wait, I need another mining drone. Oh. Four. I only need one salvager, really. Get you out. Put the mining drone in. I'm happy with it.
We're at about time, so I'll wait another 30 seconds for formality's sake.
Oh. Hey, we got a picture. Where are they?
Okay, well, oh yeah, Mike's picking up. Good. So, before we begin, I thought I'd mention a small thing, which is that originally the Joker intended to be a playable race in EVE. obviously this didn't come to pass, but it did result in some interesting circumstances. For instance, there was a Jove rookie frigate that was available in-game for the developers. And so, as you'd figure, a developer was rolling around one day in a Jovian rookie frigate, and as you'd figure, someone asked him for his mining laser because, hey, trinkets? The developer, not quite realizing that a Tech 5 mining laser was a thing of value, handed it over. And that sort of betrayed an issue that the developers would face with bringing the Jove in as a playable race, that they would be out of scale in terms of balance with the rest of the races, and they were perhaps better used as this mysterious force for the story, which is actually best exemplified by a track in the old jukebox, the Jovian Riddle, which is where this presentation draws its name from. And it's actually a really fun track. If you get a chance to listen to it, we've been using it for our archives. And with that said, I'm Makoto Priano, and let's move on.
Xenoarchaeologists with the Arataka Research Consortium have announced further
It's poo-poo
progress in
audio.
the study of Jove cadavers.
It's like my audio. Oh, my camera is pointing up.
Drifter hive
Did I bump it?
Some success
A little
with
bit.
dating some of the structures themselves was also
There you
announced.
go.
This effort has taken on additional urgency following recent developments in the ongoing Drifter crisis. We go to ARC spokesperson Uriel Paradisi Antiognorecci for more.
We've been aware of the principal Jove clone lines, statics and modifiers for some time. What we now know is that while the Misubania tissue samples indicate additional modification, the contemporary Jove clone has roots that reach back over a millennium. Interestingly, the sleeper infrastructure found in the hives also dates back to the same period, the final days of the Second Jove Empire. Hive-site enclaves and other structures measure only slightly over 1,000 years in age at maximum, making these some of the last sleeper constructs established before the apparent collapse of their civilization. Dating the debris fields within the Nexus anomalies has proven impossible, however, due to interference from the strong energetic discharges emitted by the scattered structures comprising them. Researchers continue to gather whatever material they can in the hope of untangling the mysteries surrounding the Drifter crisis. This is Civilian Von
And Elinari Rodin.
reporting in live for the discourse.
It's sort of handy to be able to write the news yourself. So, hello. As you may have gathered, I'm Makoto Priano. I'm with the Arataka Research Consortium. We're a bunch of nerds that do story and drifter things. And I will probably be joined at some point on stage by Uriel, who will be helping with the Q&A portion of this. And it's definitely helpful to get some additional input on this because we've been able to talk about Jove stuff.
Oh, look, repair modules. I didn't know you could do that.
Weeks, months, years, and some of these mysteries, some of these riddles, we haven't really begun to untangle. So, of course, that brings me to a point and a concern with regard to this presentation, because there's so much there, there's so much breadth, so much depth, that what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to bring us all up to a shared common level of understanding, and then we'll go to an extended tinfoiling and Q&A session once we're all up to a shared level of understanding, once we start all facing the questions that surround Jovian history. So that's to say,
Jovian history. I don't know who the Jovians are. Yes, I play the game. I don't know the lore.
The individual factions of Jove, and ideally we'll have about half the time for Q&A. But before we start talking about Jove, I want to talk about something that will probably make a professor of literature cringe, which is, say, cyberpunk. EVE Online is without a doubt a cyberpunk game, and when I say cyberpunk, what I'm referring to is this genre of fiction where you're faced with questions of identity and purpose in the face of technology that renders you faceless and anonymous. It's even more pronounced in the case of the Jove because they have pursued this post-human ideal, this cyberpunk exploration of what it means to be human, to the point they've become almost a post-human Icarus, sailing, or rather flying too high, being burnt, and then crashing to the ground. So I'm going to end up referring a few times to elements of the Jovian story that are quintessentially post-human and really bring home questions that cyberpunk and postmodern literature deal with. But of course, we have to deal with the Jove to get there. And I should say that when I say Jove, it's in fact not just the Directorate Jove. It's not just the ones with the green ships that are really awesome that we all want to fly. It's not even necessarily the Jove and their immediate predecessors, the Second and First Empire Jove. It also applies to those factions of Jove that have survived. Like the Sleepers, for instance, are a Jovian faction. The Drifters, depending on your definition and depending on what they actually are, might also be a Jovian faction. For that matter, the Triglavian Collective, if what we're guessing is right, might also be a Jovian faction. Though, of course, obviously we don't know yet. So, today, when I say Jove, it's going to be the big picture, and I'm going to attempt to be very specific when I'm talking about Directorate Jove, or Sleepers, or other factions like the Elders. So this was done by Adra LaFisk of Aderon Robotics a few years ago in old Hydrostatic podcast days, and this is a pretty good basic sketch of the factions that are involved. And you can see that if this were on like a cork board, you would have strings everywhere tying them together. But the important thing is that the story overall is actually fairly linear until you get to, well, the point where it naturally becomes chaotic, because inevitably that's what happens with all history. But we may as well start with the beginning. And this is in fact actually a story as old as New Eden itself, because the Jove were among those first colonists, or rather the colonists passed through the Eve Gate. They were actually some of the last colonists to pass through before its collapse. But what's worth noting is that in their early days, they were radically different from what we know them as now. They were poor. They were technically inept. I honestly sort of think of them as space Amish, except instead of raising barns, they're raising stargates. And because they expected to have no lifeline back to old Earth, they actually weathered the Dark Ages significantly better than any other faction, which is one of the reasons why they have had so much time to develop. And of course, the period of the most profound development, that's say when they became, well, when they transformed from space Amish to a proper empire, is the period that we refer to as the First Empire, spanning a vast period of 8,000 years, which I'm sure there's a lot of history there, but it's also ancient history, and so we don't know it. But we do know is how it ended, which is to say that a faction that used Jovian biotechnology to enhance their lifespan came into power. These are the Elders. And they sort of thought that, well, perhaps the Jove had reached the pinnacle of development. Perhaps they had developed far enough. Perhaps they had explored enough and expanded enough. And perhaps they should just call it good where they were. But as you would imagine, sort of like a pressure cooker on a stove, it did not go well, especially when that pressure cooker is left too long without tending. And so the First Empire collapsed into civil war and bloodshed. Of course, all collapses must be arrested at some stage, and this one, fortunately, had actually been stopped before the complete collapse of the First Empire, and a Second Empire rose from essentially the ashes or the detritus of the First. And this was under the first tyrant, Miko Bor. And I know your first inclination when you hear tyrant is go, but this is in the modern sense where we have this sort of dictatorial...
Hey, I thought it was funny, bro. I didn't hear any of them people laughing. That was a good one.
Think of it more in the classical sense, where tyrant was essentially like a king, except not a king, which is notable because the Second Empire Jove actually elected their leadership from their leadership councils. That say the tyrant had considerable power, but he came from the ranks of leaders, and so there was at least some element of
George Washington
democracy that prevented things from stagnating too much. Of course, the Second Empire is also when the Jove became what we would most recognize as Jove. They became a people of clones, of infomorphs. The statics and modifiers, the factions that we end up knowing in the modern day, are first established here. And naturally, there are shady things going in the background, as there inevitably are, and as with all empires, inevitably it collapsed. But how it collapsed is something that continued to mark the Jove basically until modern day. And this is the Jove disease.
Oh, I'm stuck.
There is
That's not good.
that we know in the lore, but it is still fairly mysterious.
This is why you align to and stay in the clear.
For
Uh-oh, what was that?
that have already been birthed and reached maturity, it's sort of like dementia in that it
Oh, shit. There we go. We're clear. Go, 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 go.
and it renders them in the end catatonic. But it also caused essentially the bricking of Jove clones in gestation. So this was a species that was entirely reliant on this technology, on cloning, to reproduce by the end of the Second Empire. And that technology itself was essentially ineffective in the face of the Jove disease. Of course, there were other factors. There was civil war. There were various
Go eat
factions
breakfast
that
instead
were
of have a
accusing each
cigarette.
other of being the cause of the disease or not doing enough to stop it. As inevitably happens, the empire fragmented to a great degree. And this is the point at which wormhole space is formed as we know it. That the sleepers are closed off.
I'm gonna take a break. I need food. My stomach really, really hurts. I need food. So we're gonna put these in here. Check what the price would be off of one plus a little bit. Okay, 1101. 790, but I can get a shitload more Veldspar at a time than I can. You just keep it going like that. But for now, we'll let it chill. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I've been recording for an hour and a half. So in an hour and a half, I basically made 5 mil. So that's not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. I'll keep doing it. I'll keep going. What's that? What is that? Oh, it's the screen. Watch. It's a shadow of my light off of a mirror, so I can get shadow from both sides. Or I mean, light from both sides. Big brain moves for lighting. Use mirrors, smoking mirrors. Okay, I'll be right back.